What's up, everybody? It's LG Doucette here. You're listening to The First Mint, a podcast where I talk about NFTs and the world of Web3. The podcast comes out every Monday morning and occasionally on Wednesdays. If you like this content and you want some more, feel free to visit our Twitter page at The First Mint. So today's guest is Malik, Jiffry, who is the general manager of UFC Strike, which is something that I actually didn't know until about a week ago. And I didn't actually find out, he didn't tell me or anything like that. I was just under the assumption, honestly, that of all the Dapper products, only one of them had this general manager title kind of thing, which was Janie from Top Shot, which we had on the show a couple weeks ago to talk about, her methodology for growing Top Shot. Great episode. You can listen to it. Anyways, the way I found out that Malik is the general manager of UFC Strike was I saw a note in the NFL All Day Discord saying that Dave Feldman was the GM of All Day. And then I messaged Malik because we've been, coordinating with him. We'd been covering a lot of the UFC Strike drops on Twitter and doing live spaces for them. I messaged him. I was like, hey, does UFC Strike have a GM? Who is that? And he's like, me. I was like, oh, I didn't realize that. I didn't even know because he's been kind of our main contact for setting up, some of our little collaborations there. So that was kind of funny because it's that happened right as International Fight Week started last week, which is kind of the UFC's kind of crown jewel event in Vegas, where they have a whole week of fun stuff. And just around the time that Malik was actually heading down there to set up a lot of the UFC Strike stuff. So kind of funny coincidence. And with that, I asked him, I was like, listen, you should come on the podcast. This is the highest time right now for UFC. All the other sports are super dead as well. Top Shot, NBA obviously has free agency. It's really exciting, but there's no games. NFL, a couple weeks away from getting going, especially on the fantasy side. So I wanted to have Malik on to talk about another product from Dapper, obviously that's out there churning out moments and also adding a lot of utility. They've done a lot of great stuff lately. They've added some burning. They've added free NFTs that are claimable for anybody that signs up or anybody that's already on the platform. They've started to release, or they've always released, very specific themed packs around either certain fighters or around certain fun themes, like the Dojo packs last month, which are all about karate-based fighters. I'm going to tell you guys right now that if you're tempted to turn this off because you don't like UFC, I can't blame you. Up until 6 months ago, I didn't like UFC. But as you'll hear in the show, I have gotten a lot more into it through UFC Strike. I don't mean that in the really kind of cheesy way you might expect of I love owning the moments and that what makes me a UFC fan. I don't mean it that way. I mean, literally, it's something that's brought me in that I was interested in. Phil's really excited about it. A lot of other people in our community are excited about it. So I started to watch some of the fights and I've actually grown to appreciate UFC so much more. I actually find it that it's a sport that's actually really classic. It's probably one of the oldest sports in the world. Basically, two guys beating the shit out of each other, right? There's very few other sports that have been played for that long. And I actually find it incredible that there are people willing to do this still today. There's no reason these days you need to go walk around and get punched in the face for a living, but there's still people who really want to do that. And there's some people that are really good at it. And everybody in the UFC, men, women, everybody are incredibly gifted athletes. So watching some of the events the last couple of months, I have gotten more into it and I really enjoy the storylines, and as a result, it's made me quite a lot more passionate about UFC Strike. It's the only sport, or one of the only interests in NFTs that has actually been the gateway to me discovering the actual theme. So, want you guys to know that my fandom is legit. It's new to UFC, but it is very legit. Like many of you, maybe I always thought it was kind of dumb. I always thought it was kind of weird, but I actually enjoy it a lot more. So, we wanted to have Malik on this week to chat about that. He said some really interesting stuff in here as well. I challenged him a few times. I asked him, what has been his biggest challenge? What's been the hardest part of working on UFC Strike? What has been their proudest achievement so far out of everything that they've rolled out the last couple months? And also, what are they trying to build? Right? That's the biggest question. Is what are they trying to build? What is the point of UFC Strike? What tier of fandom are you trying to hit? How are you attracting new people to the platform, people that are UFC fans, which there are many of, but also making sure that the degen traders like us, people that are into NFTs 24/7, how are you keeping us happy as well? So he's got some great answers here, and he's answering these live, or not live, it was recorded last week, but he's answering them having landed in Vegas to go, can do all the great stuff for UFC Strike in Vegas on the ground for the big event. So I hope you enjoyed this interview with Malik from UFC Strike on the First Minute. Gentlemen of the First Minutes, we are on with Malik, who is the GM of UFC Strike. I didn't know this until the other day, and when he referred to the GM of UFC Strike in third person in a DM to me, and then 2 weeks later I was like, who is the GM? And he told me it was him. Malik, I don't know if that's a recent designation, but we're very honored to have you, GM, Sultan of UFC Strike, let's call it.
No, it's awesome to be here. I've been a long-time listener, first-time participant in the podcast and the show, and yeah, relatively new, appointed. Been working on UFC Strike for a while though, and been at Dapper for over a year now. But yeah, super glad to be here and chat all things NFTs and UFC Strike.
Dude, how did UFC Strike decide to have a general manager? That's my main question, because we had Top Shot, that's been a thing for a while, and now it's Janie, and this everybody talks to Janie on Twitter and all that kind of stuff. But it's this has been so sneaky that UFC Strike has a general manager. What was that conversation like? How did that happen?
Yeah, I mean, I think was one of the more experienced folks on the team. I think just given some of my background working, at the NFL, at Activision, and some of the marketing stuff that I've done on Top Shot, I kind of got the call, and I think folks felt I was doing a good job in kind of the role I was given, and I think it's also just to help streamline decision making internally, to kind of have people to sometimes when you have a lot of people in the room with different opinions, and kind of can get difficult to come to consensus. So I think it's good to have just a little bit of clarity, and super honored to be kind of in this role, and excited for kind of what we've accomplished, but also what the future has in store.
Well, dude, I gotta say, I've been really enjoying the decision making, let's say, on UFC Strike. So kudos to you and the team. I know you'll say it's a team effort, but totally appreciate the need for somebody to make the calls, right? Because it is tough. There's a lot of different possibilities, and you guys are working on products that don't really have precedent, right? So it's it's not easy to make some of those calls. Do you currently now, and I'd just to set the table for everybody, it's we're talking, it's Wednesday night. You just landed in Vegas. You're there for International Fight Week. You guys are doing a million different things. So thank you for making time. Do you what level of let's call it like pressure, for lack of a better term? What do you feel like it's all right, like if people don't like the latest airdrop on UFC Strike, it's you're gonna have nightmares, or what is it, to what level do you kind of manage decision making pressure? I've always been wondering about that. Even when I post a podcast, I go on Twitter and I'm like, what are people saying? It's so it's just how do you kind of manage that, and how do you feel that being appointed as more of an official position like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely not something that's, or I'm definitely in the Discord on a daily basis. I am on Twitter all the time. I do some of the posting myself as well. And so it's kind of hard to avoid, some of the feedback on all the decision making and the decisions that we make. But I think it's definitely one of the big things that I learned at Activision, having worked on Call of Duty. And, you're going to get a lot of feedback from the community regardless. And, sometimes it can be difficult to please everyone, but I'm definitely reading everything, trying to understand their viewpoints and kind of where people are coming from. But also knowing that they may not have kind of the full picture of, what we're trying to do and what we're trying to accomplish. And so I don't want to, get ahead of our announcements that we've been working on in the background that we may, have in store for them in the future, that kind of satisfy some of their complaints, or, I don't want to call them grievances, but feedback, I guess, is a better term. Because, I think part of the fun of, being in these communities and participating in these NFT projects are these surprises that come out of nowhere. And, we want, when we put something out there, to kind of go out there with our best foot forward. So I think the Champion Club is like a great example of that, where we were still working in the background. It's something I've been working basically since the inception of the product. Um, and when we announced it, it was something that I wanted to like really hit with the community and land, and have like a really comprehensive list of benefits. Was super easy to understand, because we definitely heard all the feedback around when are we going to get rewarded for certain things, and in the moment is definitely you know you got to take it on the chin a little bit, knowing that it's like just
Yeah.
wait a little bit longer. Like, we're trying to do the stuff, but I think that was kind of one of the big things I learned at Activision working on Call of Duty, is just got to keep your eye on the prize, and kind of trust the vision that you're going out to build, um, and do our best to help the community make informed decisions, so that they're not hurting themselves because of this lack of information.
Right.
But I think at the same time, people want to be surprised, and they want to be taken on this journey um, with us, and we're super honored to have everyone who has kind of trusted us so far to this point.
Malik, take me back to, I love what you're saying about like working in Activision, and actually I'm really keen to hear about like working with those types of fans and working on other products. Because I think it's like really important to like know where you came from and also what experience that those other brands were like, because we want to know like how you guys are planning to, and how you're planning to shape Strike. How did you first kind of encounter crypto and NFTs? Like, we always want to know the origin story, but how did it first come across your radar? Knowing that you were already working like in online communities and then like really, really clearly like hyperactive brands.
Yeah. So first kind of exposure to crypto and NFTs, I had done some dabbling in investing here and there, but the idea of these digital assets that you owned and you really cared about was definitely not a foreign concept to me. I've been a huge gamer my entire life. Spent basically 2 years working, or 2.5 years working at Activision on the Call of Duty brand. And a big portion of what's important to players is what their skin looks like, what their gun looks like, and those things were super super important to players, and was a huge part of just the Call of Duty business, which was part of what I worked on, mainly working on social media and digital marketing. So we were kind of on the forefront of getting feedback from the community, figuring out how we want to message these things to them, and you know that's kind of, once I heard about NBA Top Shot while I was working at the NFL, this idea of owning collectibles, things like that was, I was like, oh wow, I love the Lakers. I'm a huge sports fan. I collect signed jerseys.
Yeah.
I collect art. It's like, why wouldn't I want this as well? So yeah, I think I started getting really into Top Shot, and kind of the rest was history. Honestly, a big part of my journey in terms of learning about NFTs was this podcast. So it's kind of awesome full circle moment to be kind of a featured guest on it. But yeah, I think then kind of made the jump over to Dapper from the NFL.
When you first heard about Top Shot, like what was like the incubation period for you from when it like somebody told you about it to when you were like aping in, listen to First Mint, whatever you're doing? Like what was that turnaround time?
Same night.
Same
Same
night.
night.
Awesome, man.
So it's honestly a very, very vivid memory. Um, so I got a text from an old boss of mine. Some people may know him on Twitter as the Smarmy Bum, and he basically, it kind of texted to me NBA Top Shot. He's like, you should look into this for the NFL.
Yeah.
Maybe I think it could like have a good fit.
Oh, you were
We're
at
both
the
big
NFL at
Lakers
the time.
fans. Yeah, I was at the
Right.
NFL at the time. So
Okay.
I was actually in Tampa for the Super Bowl.
Right.
So I was working the Super Bowl, and I was in my
Yeah.
hotel room, and he had texted me about this. And I started kind of logged in, created an account, started browsing some Lakers moments. Next thing you know, I bought a Alex Caruso S1 block against Harden.
Oh my
I
God.
bought a the LeBron 3 where he kind of like looks away and daps up Dennis Schroeder
Yeah, yeah.
on the bench. I was like, then and kind of I'm like listening to podcasts. I'm kind of staying up for stress tests and getting my brother and all my family into it. And
That's amazing.
now we're here.
Dude, that's so good, man. And then did that actually, I'm curious, I don't know if you're at liberty to say, but then did that must have precipitated some conversations at the NFL. Like I'm assuming like if you're like I spent all night looking at this stuff, you must have had a conversation with it sometime later with your colleagues, I would assume, at least.
Definitely kind of water cooler talk with folks at the NFL. The NFL, I mean, as you know, is a massive organization. My role at the NFL was more in like a social media marketing capacity. So that wasn't necessarily in my jurisdiction.
Mhm.
It is definitely something I raised when I was there. I was like, we should definitely look into this. Like, I think there's something here that's, novelty in terms of the technology that I think is really engaging for fans. But nothing that I had major traction on personally while I was at the NFL before I ended up coming to
Oh, I
Dapper.
didn't mean it like that. I just meant like as other people who are into sports. I feel like a
Oh,
lot of
totally.
yeah. I feel like anywhere that like was
Yeah.
just in that general interest, people just kind of stopped what they were doing for a couple months and just mainly just lined up for stress tests at all times of the day.
Yeah. I mean, 100%. I think that was one of the every single person that was at the end of every Zoom call that was the conversation. Oh, like, did you get that latest pack from NBA Top Shot? Or oh, like, what do you have in your collection? Because like there was no virtual, or it's basically the equivalent of the virtual water cooler, right?
Yeah.
Because we weren't in the office, so
Oh,
everybody's
right.
kind of hanging out
Yeah.
at the end of Zoom calls, and or it's like yo, like send me like a Zoom invite if you're gonna line up for the pack, and like let's just wait in line together in the Zoom call.
Nice. Dude, I saw that Top Shot today actually rolled out a similar feature that's like you can be in the queue with like your family or like whoever you want. Um, so
Okay,
yeah,
cool,
yeah, I'm
cool.
glad they're jumping on that communal experience. So, uh, how did you so after that, how did you end up kind of coming around to working at Dapper?
Yeah, so I had worked pretty closely with Dave at the NFL.
Right.
I didn't work on his team per se, but we worked on a ton of projects together. And honestly, a little bit was kind of what I talked about earlier, where we'd have these kind of post Zoom call moments where we're talking about what was going on with the latest Top Shot pack, and did you get in on this drop or did you get lucky? What are what are you doing in terms of moments that you're looking to get? And when he made the move to Dapper, I knew it was something. It was like an opportunity I couldn't pass up,
Mm.
and so you kind of approached him, and I was like, "Hey, this is definitely something I want to be a part of." And luckily enough, he was able to bring me along, and super fortunate for that, for sure.
Yeah, and then look at that now. Dapper has the NFL license anyways, and it has a great product they're rolling out. So it's funny, it just kind of all comes together. But you're working on Strike, and I do want to dive into that. I'd love to even before I do have a lot of questions for you about like your role specifically as GM and kind of what you see as like the priority. But first, I would like to kind of tap into what you were saying about both like NFL and you were saying about Activision and just if you could tell me a little bit, Malik, about how the crafting the like online like fan experience is different for this. And I don't mean necessarily just for UFC Strike. I mean in general for NFTs because it's clear that like, we all feel like we're onto something special here just in general in the NFT community. And I also, I worked in social media for a long time as well, and it's something where it's just like it's immediately different to me. And I'm curious, tell me a little bit about that, about how this type of community is different, especially even from just like crafting a brand experience.
Yeah, it's a really, really interesting question. I don't think anybody has 100% nailed it, to be honest, because it is such a different thing to, you know, the same group of people within that community. I think, even amongst UFC Strike collectors, I think there's different types of people, and UFC Strike means different things to those people. Whether that's you're in the champion club and you see it as an awesome way to connect with like-minded UFC fans. If you are a fan of Israel Adesanya and you just want to collect as many Izzy Adesanya moments. There's definitely people that are playing the market. And so I think it's difficult to kind of cater for everyone. I think we definitely, in terms of like our vision for the product, want to have UFC Strike basically be a way for you to get closer to the sport in whatever fashion that is. But I think in terms of what I've learned from the past, like I think Call of Duty really, really taught me a lot about just kind of the care that we need to take with the product, because I think similar to NFTs, this is something that people, deeply, deeply care about. Call of Duty, for a lot of people, it is um, something that takes up, so much of their time. For some people, it's a way that they make money as a streamer or from an esports perspective, and we're kind of custodians of that. And it's really important for us to kind of really take that into an account. And I think the same thing goes with NFTs in that, a lot of people have invested, their hard-earned money into the product, and I kind of see us as almost custodians of that, and to try and basically do our best to kind of treat everyone as, almost a shareholder in the overall ecosystem and community, while still, kind of set out for the initial vision of what we had for the product. And that's to bring people closer to the sport, yeah, and also serve as entertainment and enjoyment, excitement, and kind of, some form of happiness in their life.
Did you guys use Discord a lot, Activision? Was it around back then when you were there?
We we did not
Hmm.
really. We were definitely aware of it,
Yeah.
but it was not something that we really took an active strategy
Right.
on. I left Activision in 2019,
Okay.
so we're definitely aware that people were using it to communicate with each other, but we didn't have an official Call of Duty Discord channel that we supported, so to speak.
How do you find, like, I mean, obviously you guys have a whole team managing, but it's like, how do you find like the the experience of interacting with the fans and something as like insane as Discord? Like, to me, like when I first started doing Discord and NFTs, I was like, this is insane that this is how we're going to communicate over this stuff. Like, even, I just compared it to, I was like, it's like you're just, especially if it's stuff you're investing in or collecting, or in this case, both. It's like you're just in this like constant channel with, like, imagine being in a constant channel with other people who own like a Tesla stock that you also have. And it'd be nuts. It'd be like so crazy. This
Yeah,
stuff is far more elevated. It's also, these are collectibles. They're not stocks. So it's like, it's a significantly different thing that you're spending your money on. But the speculation is even higher because there's like fandom involved. We don't know. There's a bit of mystery. We don't know what you're going to release, right? So it's like, what is that like to
yeah.
actually be on that like 24/7 message to message level with people?
It's definitely very, very interesting. I think we're lucky we got a great community team. I got to give a shout out to them. They're, always on top of it. I chat with them probably more than anyone else I do at Dapper, just to make sure that we have a really strong pulse of what's going on. But I think having worked in social media across, the NFL and Activision, you even can tell differences in the communities of, how people communicate on Twitter versus Instagram versus Facebook versus Reddit. And now I kind of see Discord as another avenue of just a new way people communicate.
Mhm.
And so you're always going to kind of get those variances amongst the different platforms. And it's so funny because you could be in one area and kind of think the world's on fire, then go to another platform and be like, oh wow, this is incredible. Like, people are over the moon for this.
Yeah.
So try to always take things with a grain of salt and kind of analyze the bigger picture. But it is fun to jump in there too and just shoot the shit with the community, and especially on fight nights. I think,
Oh
Powell
yeah.
and the team have done a great job of kind of making fight nights an event in the UFC Strike Discord too.
Let's talk a little bit more. We chatted community. I do want to chat product, right? Because you guys are making improvements regularly right now to the platform. Clearly, there's a lot more at play beyond just like everything that's happening this week. How do you like, as a GM or even just being part of the team, right? It's like how do you approach like how do you work with the product team? How do you give them feedback? How does that kind of all work together? Like I'm literally looking for like a peek behind the curtain of like what that process is like and how you guys plan, like not just for, hey, here's some short-term stuff we want to roll out, but also like long term, here's what we want this to be.
Totally. I think a lot of it is kind of rallying around that set vision that we have, and also just delivering on things that we know are big pain points for the community. We know from a product perspective, for example, the marketplace and really nailing the marketplace experience is number one for us right now from a product development standpoint. Just as collectors ourselves, prior to coming to Dapper, because we're not allowed to trade right now. Um, but you spend almost so much time on the marketplace trying to scour the marketplace. So we really want to make that experience, as user friendly as possible,
Hmm.
and really kind of focus our efforts on things that are going to impact the most amount of people and the most amount of time that they're going to spend on the platform. Uh, in addition to that, I think one of the big things that we're working on as well is just collection organization. But on top of that, I think we also just try to prioritize things that we think the community is going to enjoy and find fun and exciting. Like, I think the hype NFT is a really great example of that, where we know that some of the most exciting things about the sport are things that happen outside of the octagon.
Hmm.
And we wanted to figure out a really awesome way to give that to fans, have it be used as a also a marketing lever for us, but also still not neglect fans that have been with us since day one. So there's a kind of fine balance there, and definitely some negotiating that happens where we kind of all get together and think about what we should prioritize, and kind of we come to a decision based on how much time things are going to take, but also what's going to make the biggest impact.
What do you think's made the biggest impact so far?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
I think the I'm really really proud of the team around the burning challenges that we've been able to
Yeah.
release. I think it's something that you know the whole team was super supportive of, and I I think the big thing we really wanted to introduce to UFC Strike was this idea of rewarding people who believed in athletes. So I think the Kamzat is a Kamzat challenge was a great example of how a lot of people kind of believed in him, and we saw people stacking his moment. And we want to create systems that would allow folks to be rewarded for that belief
Hmm.
in that fighter
Hmm.
by, you know, giving them an opportunity to kind of merge those together
Yeah.
or burn them, and then get this new awesome moment um, against Burns. It was also too easy to launch like our very first burn challenge with a moment against Burns, so it was just kind of a no brainer as well. But I think those are things that we want to continue to do. I think we are all very aware of we want to take scarcity super seriously as a part of the platform.
Hmm.
And I think this was a great indication to the community that you know we do take scarcity really seriously, and we want to give people an opportunity to get things that they want, and be rewarded for kind of their belief in the product, their collections, and give them opportunities to trade in something that they may not want for something they do want. And so I think the Whaley challenge that's kind of just wrapped up today is another example of we wanted to capture this moment that happened from a very recent fight while it's still super relevant, fresh in people's minds, and
Hmm.
a lot of excitement around that fight. And we have a little bit of oversupply and some series zero moments, and so I think
Oh.
that was kind of a match made in heaven. Let's give people an opportunity to trade those in, basically, to get this awesome new moment from a debut fighter.
How do you determine that something has oversupply?
I think we basically just look at, a lot of different metrics in terms of one, I think feedback from the community, across multiple, social media platforms. Yeah, I would be lying to you if I didn't tell you that I didn't look at, floor evaluations and things like that. So I would say there's a lot of different factors there. But I think we've also kind of tailored down our edition sizes for Series One as well, because we want to make sure that all the Dapper products have this level of investability in them. And so for UFC Strike, that was kind of one of the big things that we wanted to focus on. And I think with Series Zero having this kind of cut in supply, I think has been really good. I think with the Whaley Challenge itself, we've burned over 24,000
saw that
moments in total, and I think it also rewards the holders as well. So for people that didn't even participate in the challenge, for Kamzat, for example, they saw their moment values increase just by holding on to the moment, which I think is also a really positive sign.
Dude, absolutely. Is burning something that, and as you know, I have been the torchbearer of burning, I guess, or at least in the first mint community. I've been banging that drum for a long time, and either to dramatically reduce supply and or to add like a good deal of gamification and some fun to it, right? Because but I love everything you're saying, that it's like it's not only just about rewarding the people who had already stacked a lot of moments of a certain fighter, but also ways to kind of like make little corrections to either too much supplies come out, or even just to add more demand and just take some stuff off the table and manage scarcity, which is great. Is that to get something like burning to the table? I've always been curious. Is that something that you have to work with UFC on? Are they on board with that? Is that something that Dapper's kind of doing independently? And you can answer specifically for UFC Strike, because I'm sure it is different for every property.
Yeah, in terms of UFC Strike, the UFC's hand in hand partnering with us on all these decisions. They've been a great partner to date, and I think even Ron, who works on the UFC team, and one of our close contacts, he participated in our last AMA Discord. So I think they're very aware of some of the feedback from the community, but also I think they also trust us in terms of, we've done this before. This is our area of expertise. That's why they brought us on as a partner.
Yeah.
So, they've placed a lot of faith and trust in us to help guide and shepherd some of these decisions. And then I think they bring a great lens of, what they think is going to resonate with their fans, content that they think may, break through the clutter. And obviously, what's important to their fighters and their kind of, organization as well. But, overall, they've been, really awesome partners to work with, but they're also kind of making all these decisions with us hand in hand, and everything from the challenges to moments that are in packs to the themes of some of those packs. They've been, awesome partners and, kind of lockstep with us.
How do you guys determine who the target demo is for something like this? And this is also like to peek behind the curtain first minute. It's like, this is a conversation we have almost every day with a lot of different partners and new people to the industry, and even just something that we kind of observe in terms of the fan base and the community is like, right now for NFTs, it's like, should NFT projects be going after the NFT? I call it just the degen crowd, right? The people that are like living and breathing, and it's like mints at all times of day, right? Which was the degen crowd for a while, was us, collecting top shots, and now has evolved into being people collecting goblins and other crazy shit. But you know what I mean? It's like the NFT like native people are just like there, and they're ready to go. Versus like, hey, let's go and get the, however many global UFC fans there are, MMA fans, which is hundreds of millions, I'm sure, if not billions. How do you and the UFC kind of visualize that as being the target demo? Because I've always had the opinion that it's like, yes, new fans are good. You want to bring the people who already freaking love MMA and they love these people and they love these athletes in here, but you might end up inevitably having a lot more like liquidity and marketplace action from degen people because we're just like, let's just buy all this shit all the time and we want to gamify it. You know what I mean? So it's like I'm
Yeah,
genuinely curious how someone like in your position working with the UFC, how you guys kind of manage that and what the approach is.
totally. So I think this, I don't want this to come across as a cop out answer, but I think it is a healthy mix of both. We definitely want to allow fans who see these as investable or can kind of play the market and win some money or earn some money have the opportunity to do that by using their eye for fighters to predict who they think is going to increase in value. I think that's a big part of what makes these NFTs and our UFC Strike fun. I also think that fans, but especially digitally native fans for the UFC, is a big growth audience for us, that we want them to basically feel that UFC Strike is a digital fan platform for them.
Hmm.
And what I think is different from the UFC compared to basketball, baseball, football, I think those have always had really well established collectible markets, physical collectible
That's
markets
true.
that the UFC has, but it's not as ingrained in the fan experience or culture as you say basketball cards, for example, that I think every kid had growing up. So I think there's a big opportunity for UFC fans to be able to display their fandom using UFC Strike unlike they've ever been able to before, which I think
Hmm.
is a really awesome opportunity for us that we're actively trying to kind of solve.
Do you think there would ever be physicals of UFC Strike?
I don't know about that. I think yeah, we're gonna have to to focus on the immediate vision
All
first.
right, all right, all right, all right, all right. That's fine. That's fine. You just got me excited for a second. No, because that's actually a really good point, right? Is that it's like you're right. Like even especially obviously baseball goes back decades, but things like
Totally.
even now you still get headlines. Like I think there's like a LeBron card that sold the other day, like 2 days ago for
Yep.
$2 million, right? So it's just like that's still like a normal part of the market, and that was like an easy sell on Top Shot early on for a lot of new people. Where it's like, hey, it's the elegant, at the base level. If you're already a card collector, you know that this already solves like half the problems you would have as a card collector. So it makes total sense, and there's scarcity and there's demand. So just come and play. But for something like UFC, where
Yep.
it's like there isn't really like a collect. What is the collectibles market of UFC? Like, do people collect? I would assume people
Yeah.
collect like signed memorabilia and stuff like that. But there
100%.
cards? Are there like there's no physical cards? Are there UFC?
There are. I don't think it's quite
You
as
can't have the same
popular
culture.
compared to
Yeah.
their exactly, but I think signed gloves, pieces of the canvas, those are all
Oh,
I think kind of highly sought after
a tooth, a
pieces of
tooth, or something
memorabilia.
like that, or like a
Yeah,
piece of a body.
yeah. But I think even if you just want to support your favorite athlete
Yeah.
in the UFC, I think for basketball or football, it's like, oh, I'm gonna go buy LeBron's shoe, or I'm gonna go buy. I'm a Packers fan as well. I'm gonna go buy an
Oh
Aaron
wow.
Rodgers jersey.
Yeah.
Um, whatever it may be. I think in my mind, like we want UFC Strike to be that next experience for UFC fans where, hey, if I want to show my fandom for Izzy before this next fight, I got to make sure I have all my UFC Strike moments so that I can show all my friends and how big of an Izzy fan I am.
Right, right. Would you ever do something like, because when you guys gave that, I do want to ask you about the Izzy necklace from his last fight. But it's like, would you, would you ever do something like, and now you can own the necklace too, and it's just like pay like 20 grand to make one for yourself or something. I don't know. You know what I mean? Like something hilarious like that.
Yeah.
Like what a very limited run of hilarious Adesanya merch that you could wear it just like him.
I don't know when that will become available for collectors. What I can say is that anytime I talk to UFC fighters about UFC Strike, it is the number one request I get from them. It's like, yo, when am I going to get my UFC Strike chain? Or when
Yeah.
am I going to get my chain? I want one of those.
Oh, that's sick,
So I
man.
think, who knows? You never know who's going to pop up with the chain.
Dude, tell me how that came about. Tell me how that happened and what that relationship with Izzy is like.
Yeah, I think so. I do have to give credit to Francis Ngannou, the reigning heavyweight champ. He was the first
That's
one to kind of
right.
don
That's
a
right. Yeah,
UFC Strike champion moment chain,
that's right.
and he his knockout on Overeem, which is his champion moment from Series Zero, still I think one of the most popular, most sought after moments on the platform
Mm,
is also just like an absolutely brutal knockout.
yeah,
Just like a left-handed uppercut to the dome,
yeah.
like wild.
That's a savage one.
But yeah, when we knew that we wanted to do something with Izzy, I think I'm a huge fan of his. I love how much of a nerd he is. I'm a nerd myself. I love anime and all the superhero stuff. And I was actually watching an interview of him from back in the day, and he talks about literally in the interview, verbatim, I love to collect these moments, the videos, the pictures of them from my knockouts. Like they're super special to be able to like, capture these moments.
Mm.
And I saw that, and I was like, oh, wait, hold up, like this is just absolutely perfect for someone that we want to kind of be associated with. That this platform is kind of built for exactly that. And you know the initial kind of idea around the chain for his last fight was, you know, part of what makes the UFC so fun is the trash talking, the banter back and forth. So we pitched them this idea where, hey, you're fighting Whitaker again.
Yeah.
You fought him once before. Let's make it into a moment that, the community is going to be able to earn, but you should wear it to your press conference, to your rematch. And like, what's more badass trash talking than you wearing the chain of you beating the guy that you just fought?
That's so good.
It's like, it's awesome. I think it was definitely one of the best ideas that the teams cooked up. So, we were super happy how that turned out, and how, the storylines that kind of came with it. And I think, to me, if I could collect that moment has a little bit more, added significance to it, just given, something that actually may have even influenced the fight a little bit, just the banter back and forth,
Hmm.
which is awesome. And you can see even Whitaker to asking Dana at the press conference, man, I want one of those. Like, why don't I get one?
Yeah. That's an interesting. You're kind of spurring an interesting thought for me, where it's stuff like NFL and NBA and NHL. It's their like in-game experience for the athlete is still like loaded with highlights, right? It's like they're introduced. It's like, okay, here comes LeBron, and it's like here's a highlight of LeBron's. Here's a reel of LeBron's amazing highlights, all his amazing dunks and passes, whatever. And it's you know what I mean. It's like it's more normal to have constant screens and for that to be like always kind of reflected back. Whereas like UFC, it's like, yeah, we're watching on TV. Yeah, of course we get the promos and it's like, oh, there's the big knockout, whoa. But it's like I don't feel like that is like the actual in stadium is like it's not as reflected to them as much. So I don't know. I like the idea of I guess what I'm trying to say is that like moments for UFC, I feel like you're going to carry so much more weight because they are so much more significant, but also it's less like cultural to be like for them to be constantly played back in that way. I don't know if you kind of catch my drift there, what I'm saying, but it's just like I just think that like that idea was so cool, but also the idea of them being constantly like exposed to these highlights is not necessarily as common as it is in like a typical sports league.
I totally hear you. I think one of the biggest and one of the coolest things about UFC moments, one, I think the audio helps a ton. Just give that moment extra context and you feel the
Mm,
gravity behind it. But also, it just takes one split second in a fight to determine the outcome.
mhm,
And all of our moments, for the most part, really showcase the tipping point of that fight.
mm.
So it really encapsulates the story of these two kind of athletes going at it and the result of that clash, so to speak.
Yeah.
And whereas, I don't know if NBA Top Shot moments, obviously, what got me into this stuff, and I love what All Day's been doing. I think for UFC Strike, we've been trying to lean into the moments, being basically the storytelling of these two athletes basically kind of duking it out. And that's it. Like, some of our moments I think even have the full fight in them because it was such a quick knockout. So I think it kind of shows how quickly it just takes for that moment in a fight to become the determining factor of what becomes the storyline for
Mhm.
that athlete or that card or whatever it may be.
What has been the hardest part of working on this?
That's a tough question. Maybe come back to me that one at the end, and I'll think about it in the background.
You could think about that in like a different way too. Like hardest is not necessarily the fairest word, but like what do you perceive as like the biggest challenge? Like past in your time so far in
Yeah,
UFC, but also going forward, and feel free to split them up as well.
yeah. I think because the sport is so different than
Hmm.
from a cadence perspective in terms of how often fighters fight. For example, NBA. You know, you're gonna get Steph playing whatever 80, 90 games, however, depending on how far they go in the playoffs. So you're going to be able to try to per, guesstimate how many moments you're going to get from Steph throughout the year.
Right.
There's we don't have that luxury on the UFC strike platform. Just given someone has a injury, they may never play or they may never fight that year, or they take a bad loss and you don't know.
Or
Or someone's on a hot streak
or
and
someone like Nagano, where it's just like when is he gonna fight again? Right? Is he even scheduled for this year again?
I don't believe so, but
Yeah.
I'm not 100%
Well, it's,
sure on that.
yeah, it's like someone's so
Um,
popular, and you're like, well, we want to do stuff with him, but it's like, when's he even gonna be
yeah,
fighting, right? Yeah, interesting.
and there's also no off season, so there's pretty much regularly scheduled fights. I also think there's a breadth of just you know fighters that we want to include in the platform, where I think for some of the other sports it's easy to be like, okay, we definitely know we're going to want to have three people at least from every team or whatever. It's a bit easier to kind of just say, okay, we want to include these people. Whereas for us, you know, we want to include a good mix of up and comers that people can learn more about and get closer with, and kind of going back to that idea of you know that those athletes becoming more investable and people believing them in and kind of playing the market in that sense. But then we also want to include more stars, but we also don't want to flood the market with stars of the sport. Then there's also the historic fighters that we want to make sure fans have a chance to collect, because there's just some awesome, moments from past that, are what made the sport so popular, and that, a lot of people can trace their fandom of the sport back to. So I think we'd be, foolish not to, let people have a chance to collect some of those moments as well.
So is that been the most challenging part so far?
I think so, just because we've kind of had to chart our own course, in terms of, how we plan, even drops, from, who to include in those drops. We've definitely tried to, the latest few drops and big pay-per-view events. I think people have been able to see that we've done drops tied to those fighters that are fighting in the pay-per-view event or that card. We like trying to tie ourselves, as close to the live sport as possible, but then also introduce these kind of fun special edition themes that we think are going to resonate with the community, whether that was the 209 drop on 420, or the dojo drop, the icons drop, kind of celebrating some of the Hall of Fame inductees. So kind of going through these two parallel paths, so to speak.
It's like a challenging, but it's also exciting at the same time. Like that's the fun part, but it's also like that's the hard part.
Totally,
Yeah.
totally.
Yeah.
I think there's a big difference compared to, for example, NFL and Top Shot. They can kind of hang their hat on. We know we want to do something big around the Super Bowl, and we big Super Bowl drop, or we want to do something big around the All-Star and NBA Finals. We have to, I think, be a little bit more creative.
Wait, what are you
But
talking about, Matt? You're in
to your
Vegas
point,
for something called Fight Week. What do you mean? You're literally at the Super Bowl of UFC right now. Says the guy in the Vegas hotel room, man. For like the fight of the year, clearly on Saturday. Like that's
totally
yeah.
fair.
To play devil's advocate to my own point, it's like also like the best moment of the year for UFC can come at any moment. Okay, that could literally be any fight can be
Totally.
like, considering how highly valued like things like a great knockout is, right? It's like whereas like even something like NBA, it's like yeah, there's some amazing dunks mid-season, like the Anthony Edwards one last year, but that's not going to beat a finals moment or something like that. Like it can only go so far.
It totally depends, though, because it depends on what kind of fan you are. I think if you're a big fan of a special team or a certain team that maybe doesn't make it too far in the playoffs, Lakers, unfortunately, the highlight of the year for me, might have been a LeBron dunk.
Who do you think is the best like athlete on the planet right now? How do you define something like that? I'm asking you as a sports fan. Put everything Dapper aside. Like how do you who do you think is the best, like, and however you want to define best, but who is that right now?
From a pure athletic standpoint, I think it is difficult to go against Giannis. Just the size, the strength,
Wow.
the speed, the length. 20 before Giannis coming into the league, I think LeBron has definitely lost a step in terms of just his pop, but I think we also always forget that these folks are 6'8" or 7 foot. If we saw them on a soccer,
He's literally called the Greek freak for a reason,
or
man.
they would just look completely out of place. And for them to be able to move the way that they do,
yeah,
is pretty incredible. So, Giannis right now, LeBron number 2. At their peaks, I would probably pick LeBron, just given the dexterity.
That's fair. Yeah, that's the basketball IQ is high, and he's proven that many times. Is there? We're almost done here. Is there anything else? You guys have just rolled out so much on Strike. Is there anything else you can share with us that is coming up beyond Legacy Week?
Nothing that we can share. Legacy Week was definitely an awesome. People will be listening to this at the conclusion of Legacy Week. It's definitely our stab at really having a community-wide event, from things on the ground at UFC X, the Champion Club Lounge inside the arena itself, community airdrops, to really awesome pack drops featuring some amazing fighters. We have a 276 challenge right now that will have a fandom moment reward from the fight itself. So really, it's been a jam-packed week for us. So we definitely want to take all kind of like the learnings from this. The Champion Club is still going to be continuing to, develop. We have a lot of things that we've promised to deliver to Champion Club members that we're super excited about, whether that's merch, Fight Pass, more Champion Club lounges at pay-per-view events throughout the rest of this year. And we're super excited for people to kind of join us on that journey. And we got a lot in store and surprises as well. There's I think to my point earlier, we want people to be surprised when they get the news. I think that was one of the biggest things I learned from Activision. I think some of the best campaigns that we had were when we really just surprised people out of nowhere with something that they weren't expecting. There's always this one, I don't know if it was a Steve Jobs quote or not, but it was something about Steve Jobs that a lot of people said was he didn't give people what they wanted. He gave them something they didn't know that they wanted. Like the iPhone is a great example of people would have just wanted a smartphone or a cell phone, but they didn't even know the capabilities of what an iPhone could actually do and mean to you.
It's the line, I think one of the lines you're thinking about, I don't know if Steve Jobs said it, but it was that people wanted faster horses.
Exactly.
Instead of a car. And Ford gave them a car, but if you left it to people, they would just ask for faster horses. And there's a term for that, and I was trying to think of it the other day, of like where you like create like there's a need that people didn't know they had until you've like created that product. So that's cool. And I will say, man, on a far lower, like a different level than what you're saying, it's like that's actually. I didn't know I was like kind of a UFC fan, honestly, before Strike. Like, no, but I mean that, obviously with First Minute, it's like we're trying to cover cool stuff. And we love a lot of the stuff that Dapper's doing, and we love some of the big licenses. And obviously Phil was really excited for UFC, of course, he's a huge fan. But for me, I'd always kind of like maybe watch some of the bigger fights, but never got deep into it. Like just couldn't bring myself to follow. But since this came out, I've been like, I've been like all over it, man. And I love Adesanya, and I love like all the storylines I'm learning about. And it's been a lot of catch up for me. But owning the moments, like to me is like, oh, this actually makes way more sense to follow it this way. And maybe it is because they're so much more significant that it's like, this is how I can like own them and watch them often. Whereas like, like things like basketball and football, it's like you were saying it's different kinds of fans, but like for me, I'm like, like there's a few basketball moments I want to watch often, but it's like I don't want to watch like a mid-season Chris Paul assist. You know what I mean? Like that's not. No, I'm not saying that against the Top Shot. It's a different product, but I'm saying it's just like that's as a basketball watcher, that's not something that's like necessarily overly significant to me. Whereas somebody who's new to UFC, I'm like, yes, like getting the Izzy moment is important, and also getting exposed to new athletes that I might like. It's like, and then I just open a pack and like, here's a time where they're just like beating the shit out of somebody is like kind of cool, right? Like that's like, it's like there's no like bad moments in UFC, not that, well, obviously insinuating there might be some in others, but I'm saying it's just like it's hard to have bad highlights like that, or less significant highlights where when every match matters 100%. So much. Like there's no mailing in your performance in UFC. You know what I mean? There's no coasting. There's no like load shared resting or whatever there is that they did with like Kawhi and LeBron and stuff. Like that doesn't exist in UFC. So it's way higher stakes for the athletes, and I think it took something like Strike to help me realize that.
The best way
something that I'd be into.
I used to describe it is that every UFC Strike moment is consequential. where it meant something really important to that fighter that either won or lost, because it has a huge impact of their trajectory of that fighter storyline, their ascent to the title, to become a champion, or their descent, which, with everything in sports, there's got to be a winner and a loser, but every UFC Strike moment is consequential in that sense.
All right. We've come to the end of the show, and since you said you used to listen to the first minute, you know what happens at the end. And so we play a game called Would You Rather. And I've written down some good questions for you because I make these up as the interview goes along. So if you're ready, we're going to play Would You Rather. Are you ready? Okay, this is simple. It's a really simple one to start. Would you rather the Lakers win next year's championship with LeBron, or they trade LeBron and win 2 championships in a row?
Trade LeBron, win 2 championships in a row.
I don't know. I had to gauge your LeBron fandom there. So that's good.
LeBron. I think he is an amazing ambassador for the Lakers, but I'm a Laker fan first and foremost before any individual player. Yeah.
All right. Okay. Would you rather? Yeah, that is shock. It's shocking. I was shocked. Would you rather Adesanya wins Saturday, knocks out Cannonier, it's epic, and then he's like, UFC Strike that, boom. Or he wins, he doesn't yell that, but it's a great epic knockout anyways. And then you guys make the moment, but you're in it. Like you can see you in the background, like you're cage side, and you're just like, yeah, so would you rather you're in the knockout moment or he yells like, strike this?
Strike this would be epic. Just as much as I would love to be immortalized in the moment, I think knowing that it's top of mind for him in that moment of victory would be more satisfying to me, to be honest.
Nobody ever goes with the selfish answer for those, but somebody will, because I know people want it. Okay, last one. You have to survive 60 seconds in the ring with Francis Ngannou. And your reward is one of these 2 things, and this is what you must choose. A new Lakers dynasty or a new Packers dynasty.
Lakers dynasty. I don't know if I.
Wow. Okay. I didn't realize this is how we discover to what extent you are a hardcore Lakers fan. Okay. Clearly, these are way off.
I don't think either would come true. Just I don't know if I would last 10 seconds. I might black out as soon as the bell rings. But that is one scary dude.
Oh, bad. He is terrifying. So, to what extent would you be willing? So, okay, cool. Lakers dynasty. There you go, man. Well, right on, dude. Well, Malik, thank you so much for spending time with us, man. And best of luck. We're gonna, I guess we'll watch all your progress from afar and enjoy your time in Vegas working on the project, man. And congrats again on all the success and keen to see what comes next.
Thank you so much for having me. It's definitely an awesome experience. Coming from listening to the first minute on my walks, trying to learn more about Top Shot, to being a featured guest. It's definitely a humbling moment, and I really appreciate you for having me on and the support that y'all have shown UFC Strike. It's much appreciated.